All right. Well, we have one more clip we have to get into. Speaking of the need to work on yourself, the governor of North Carolina recently declared a state of emergency, Brad, a state of emergency, and you will not believe what it's over.
Earthquake?
No, funnily enough, it's not over a natural disaster. It's not over a terrorist attack. It's not over a pandemic. It's because school choice is rapidly advancing in the legislature. And because there is a Republican majority, he has no ability to stop it. Even if he were to veto some of this, it would be overridden. And he is out of options, therefore, legislatively. So what's a governor to do who has no ability to whip votes or actually push policies he likes or convince anybody to move his agenda? He declares a state of emergency. I want you to listen to this clip.
I'm declaring this state of emergency because you need to know what's happening. If you care about public schools in North Carolina, it's time to take immediate action and tell them to stop the damage that will set back our schools for a generation. Here's what's happening in the next few weeks. Their private school voucher scheme will pour your tax money into private schools that are unaccountable.
So, Brad, that's obviously a shorter clip from a longer press conference that the governor gave. But just to catch you up, essentially what's going on is there are a number of bills the legislature has passed he does not like. Some of them include blocking trans women from participating on female sports teams. Some of them pertain to blocking critical race theory from being taught in public schools. But what he seems to be the most upset about is a number of school choice initiatives that have been rapidly advancing. So there's a plethora of bills. I'm using plethora a lot today, and I want to stop, but I can't. It's a crutch. There's a plethora of bills that are moving around school choice issues. They've got a voucher bill. They've got a charter school bill. But most of it is getting baked into the state budget. And so the Senate has already passed it. 7 Democrats broke with him and voted in favor of it in the Senate. The House, I think, is, if I'm not mistaken, about to reconcile it. And it seems there's at least one Democrat in the House that is breaking on school choice issues quite publicly with the governor.
Love to see it.
On this issue, we have to vote for the people, essentially. So it's probably going to pass. It's got a number of school choice options baked into it. On top of that, he wanted an 18% pay increase for teachers. They're getting a 3 to 4% raise. So he's mad about all of this. The irony here is, one, his kids are in private school, which find me a defender of public schools on the left that actually has their kids in them. I've yet to see it. They all have their kids in private school. It's quite wild. But secondarily, and I think probably more importantly, North Carolina was in the bottom third of reopening their schools. So this was not somebody who really felt so strongly about how imperative public schools were a couple of years ago. And I think that's kind of the most hilarious aspect of this.
I also just find it funny because he's a Democrat, and Democrats are all about democracy these days, right? You always hear that, and you don't, not always without basis, railing against the anti-democratic forces in this country and saying they're the democracy people. All right, so he literally is declaring a state of emergency to try to block the duly elected people's representatives from passing bills he doesn't like. So he's trying to thwart democracy through unilateral executive powers. I await the breathless denunciation of this on CNN and MSNBC, Hannah. I'm sure it's coming.
They're all about democracy until they lose even the smallest battle, and then it's out the window. But no, you won't hear anybody calling out that hypocrisy. What I do think is even more important is that they ought to be calling out the problem with emergency powers and how easily they can be misused and expanded. And we saw that during the pandemic, but nothing's happened to actually restrict these powers. And now we see him literally employing a state emergency, which, I don't know exactly what all that entails in North Carolina, but that usually means there's a dedication of funds that start going towards a certain issue when you do that. I would
extra powers get unlocked. So I'm curious to see what exactly the details are under this, or if it's just a PR stunt. I mean, I think it's more of a PR stunt / desperate attempt to make the state riled up against school choice and call their lawmakers and tell them to cut all this out. I don't know. It's a Hail Mary, but it's kind of ridiculous. I think he looks like a clown. Well, let's be clear about what it is he's trying to stop. He mentioned school choice in a voucher bill, and that simply states that, say that the tax money for every student right now is allocated $10,000 per student or $20,000 per student. A portion of that, it's usually not even 100%, would be given to the parent, and then they can allocate it to whatever school they think will meet their kids' needs best. It could be a public school. It could be their exact public school. If that's working out well for them, then the parents will just stay there and the students will stay there. It could also be a charter school or a private school. So it simply gives parents options with the money that's been allocated for their kids' education. It doesn't defund education. It doesn't do anything to hurt students unless you believe that the government knows what's best for students better than their own parents do, or that parents are too stupid and ill-educated to make decisions about what's best for their kids. It really is a very common sense, a very popular policy that just introduces some basic competition and options into the system. And the idea that he doesn't just oppose that, but he's so opposed to it that he's going to declare a state of emergency really, to me, suggests that he's just completely in the pocket of teachers' unions or public school established interests who just don't want any dollars to flow out of their grasp, because there's no reason on the merits, even if you don't support something like this, to be that opposed to it. To act like it's an emergency is just suspicious.
Well, the Stillman argument for school choice is this. If your public schools are as great as you say they are, then nothing will change. People will choose to stay in them. The reason you're afraid that this will defund public schools or end up public schools closing is because you know that the institutions are garbage and that your policies have been trapping poor and lower income people in them for decades, and that when they have the option to secure a better education for their child, a lot of people are going to take it. And ultimately what that means is your piggy bank dries up, because public schools have been nothing more than that for some time. They increasingly are getting worse and worse and worse when it comes to academic outcomes. They're getting worse and worse when it comes just to the environment kids are in, as far as bullying and peer pressure, and also the agenda that's being shoved at them.
But some are good. I will say
some
that.
Are good.
And they
and
would not be defunded.
Right. They wouldn't be defunded. If you want to stay in them, you like them, that's fine. But I think the reality is they know a lot of them are not good, and they don't want them to have to compete, because ultimately they're getting $15,000 per year on average per kid. And we know the vast majority of that is not going into the classroom. Where it's going is to administrative salaries. Where it's going is into pet projects that they like football stadiums and other developments around the school property. And so they're scared of losing that. The teachers unions are scared of losing their grab bag, where often in many states they can force people even to pay into them if they're teachers. That then gets funneled into Democratic piggy banks, into campaigns. And so that's the gig that's up, right? That's what they're actually afraid of. That's the power structure that could actually be toppled here. And this is why you see the absolute histrionics and desperation to try to stop this movement. But there's no stopping it. The cat's out of the bag. You shut down schools for a politically driven agenda. And what happened in the process is that parents got to see behind your curtain and realize what was going on, and they're not backing down. So I love to see it. Cry harder, Roy. Cry harder. That's what I have to say to this.